Hello and welcome to Open Line. I'm Starlene Stringer. Well, 2019 has already been a very busy year for the Irving Police Department. So we've invited Chief Jeff Spivey to join us today with an update. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. We are glad to have you here. We know you had a big project earlier this month at a really fun location. That would be the Toyota Music Factory. And can you tell us a little bit about what the focus was for that?
We did a big exercise, a live scenario where we tested our ability to not only respond to a mass casualty event, but tested our ability to work very closely with some of our other local partners, namely the fire department and some of our state partners, Texas DPS, and our Office of Emergency Management.
Wonderful. So those were some of the people who were involved in the training with you. What were your objectives for the participants?
Mainly just to test our ability to respond to a mass casualty event, see how well we would communicate, see if we would make the right decisions when there was some added stress. Doing training when you're looking at a tabletop exercise or you're in a facility that you're very comfortable with, such as our training academy, you tend to relax and not feel that same level of stress. When you interject a different venue, when you interject live actors into the scenario, it heightens everyone's stress level, and you really get an accurate depiction of how you would respond in that type of situation.
Very interesting. I was going to say, why did you pick that location? But I guess that kind of explains it. It gives you a different way to actually do your work outside of where you usually train.
Yeah, it absolutely does, and it's one of the areas where if something were to happen, that's a venue that would be targeted. It's an area where we have 8,000 to 10,000 people on a very regular basis, and so we want to ensure that we can respond to that type of or that size of an event.
That'll definitely give people comfort when they're attending things like that to know that first responders are well prepared for anything that can happen.
And it should. We do a great deal of training to prepare for something like that. That exercise just allowed us to really heighten our skills, hone those abilities a little bit.
Wonderful. And switching topics here a little bit, I know there's a new initiative put into place that is a whole different department, the Mental Health Response Team. Why did you feel the need for that?
So more and more responsibility is being given to local entities to deal with mental health. Federal funding's been cut, state funding's been cut, but the need to respond to those folks in that crisis isn't going away. It's being pushed down to the local level. So we needed to figure out a way that we could deliver effective and efficient services to those people in need without relying upon taking them to jail. Most of the time when our officers respond to something, we're there to solve the problem. Many times that means somebody goes to jail because there's been a law broken. When we're dealing with people with mental health issues, it's not always the best solution. Even though there may be a law that's been broken, getting them into treatment, getting them some counseling, getting them on their meds, that's a more effective way to handle the problem.
So what kind of training did your team receive to prepare them for this kind of work?
So they've gone through some heightened mental health training. The really key part to this team is adding a clinician. We have a mental health professional that's on this team that works side by side with these police officers that is certainly more highly trained in dealing with folks with mental illness. And so that partnership with the guidance of the mental health leadership team really enhances our ability to provide that level of service.
And what do you hope that this team will actually accomplish in the first year?
So in the first year, we're looking for a reduction in calls for service involving our mental health consumers. Because we're not just being reactive to the calls. This team is proactive. We know who demands those services more than others, and so we're able to go out to those locations, check on those people, ensure that they're taking their meds, ensure that they're going to their meetings, and hopefully prevent them from getting into crisis so that we don't have to respond.
Now, this is kind of in the similar line of conversation, the Family Advocacy Center. Tell us about that program.
So the Family Advocacy Center really encompasses our overall plan in dealing with victims of violence, especially violence as it relates to inside the family dynamic, whether it's husband and wife, parents and children, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that dynamic is, we want to be able to address it all under one building. So we have our investigators who investigate those crimes that are stationed there. We have the victim services counselors that are stationed there that help provide and connect those people with services. We have our family counselors that are there to help families work through those issues or to help victims overcome the trauma that they've experienced. We have the children's Child Protective Services there. We have Dallas Child Advocacy Center there, and we have the District Attorney's Office there to provide legal advice and help them with emergency protective orders. It is truly a one-stop shop for victims of domestic violence.
That's wonderful, and I want to talk more about some of that, but first I have to ask you about the dog. There's a companion dog. We're seeing some great video.
There is a companion dog. Ritter has been recently added to the staff. He really helps, especially children, as they're talking through these traumatic events that they've experienced in their life. Ritter's willing to just sit there, be petted, be loved on, and it's that soothing comfort that a dog can provide that helps those kids open up.
Wonderful. Okay, now going back to what you were talking about, the DA's office, and they actually have a satellite office set up there. How does that help the families in need?
Well, it puts a DA on site. Instead of having to find a way to get down to the Dallas County Courthouse, there's a prosecutor on site that can visit with a victim of family violence, apply the paperwork for the emergency protective order, get that paperwork signed and filed without the victim having to find a way down to Dallas County.
Wonderful, and I know that this takes a lot of money to do. The Family Advocacy Center is funded by a lot of fundraisers, including a big banquet that's coming up soon.
Actually, we just had it this past Tuesday night.
Oh my goodness, exciting.
The Blue Tie Banquet's our 23rd annual police awards banquet, and the benefactor of that banquet has been the Family Advocacy Center now for a number of years. We had close to 500 people come out Tuesday night to the Irving Convention Center and celebrate with us as we celebrated the men and women of the Irving Police Department and their accomplishments that they had in 2018. And we raised a little bit of money to help fund the things that we do at the Family Advocacy Center.
Very nice, and I understand you give away some great awards too. Can you tell us about this year's recipients?
I can. We have the Chiefs Unit Award. That award went to 2 units, our burglary investigators. The work that they've done in 2018 really drove the crime reduction that we saw in Irving. Burglaries were down almost 30% over 2017, and that had a lot to do with their proactive approach to burglary investigation. Our Capers unit, our Crimes Against Persons unit, they investigate all the violent crimes in Irving, and so they did a wonderful job investigating a number of homicides, clearing a number of aggravated assaults and sexual assaults. So we really wanted to celebrate the work that they did. Our Supervisor of the Year was John Phillips, Sergeant John Phillips. He's the supervisor over the burglary unit. He was really the leader that put that unit together, that redirected the way they look at those offenses, and the way he worked with his team really demonstrated true leadership, and we wanted to celebrate his abilities in that. Our Civilian of the Year was one of our Animal Services employees, our manager out there who really takes care of the facility, who looks over and runs everything that happens inside the facility. She's done a great job of making sure that we get our animals adopted out, that they get taken care of, overseeing the staff out there. She's done a wonderful job. And then our Officer of the Year, Officer Brian Jones, just a tremendous patrol officer. He was recognized because of an investigation he initiated that ultimately solved a kidnapping and led to a 60-count federal indictment against some gang members.
Wow, and you can tell you're really appreciative for what they've done because you remember everyone's name, what they got the award for. That is very impressive.
Well, I'll tell you what, it makes my job very easy, and I can't be successful. The city doesn't get to have the kind of safety and security that we've experienced here in Irving without their hard work. And so I really love celebrating their accomplishments.
That's wonderful. And Chief Spivey, I understand you're raising money for another big initiative, and that has to do with PAL. Of course, that's the Police Athletic League. Can you tell us about that project?
We did. So it's been a little over a year ago that the Attorney General's Office for the state of Texas seized some money from a business that was defrauding or committing fraud against the residents of the state. they looked at how best to use that money, and they offered it up to a number of police athletic leagues. We went down and demonstrated why we should be the benefactors of that seizure, and the Attorney General's, the judge overseeing that money, agreed, but put a stipulation that we had to raise matching funds. So we had 6 months to raise $202,000.
Wow.
We went out and really called upon this community to help us out. In less than 4 months, we raised $250,000.
Oh my goodness.
And we're going to put that together with the money that the state's given us, and we're going to revamp and expand the Police Athletic League, move it over to the Armory over on O'Connor Road across from Irving High School, and be able to expand, reach a greater number of kids, and really make an impact in this community.
Good. What do those expansion plans include other than moving?
Adding more opportunities, boxing, archery, just giving us more space. Right now, where we are at Rock Island and Rogers, just across the parking lot here actually, is small. In the afternoons, we have over 100 kids crammed into that building. We're not able to expand any larger because we just don't have the room. Moving over to that facility is going to give us about 3 times the space we have now, and we'll be able to go out and recruit more kids for the program.
Wonderful. And what do you hope that the children who participate in PAL take away from that experience?
Just a couple of things. One, that police officers are really cool people to hang out with, that they care about them, that they're willing to invest in their lives. And secondly, that being a police officer is something that they may want to do. We've recruited a number of kids through the program who are now Irving police officers, and we get them involved in the program now, and it's been a very successful recruitment effort, and it just fosters a great relationship between us and our community.
I'm glad you brought up recruitment, because I have to ask you, what are the requirements for those watching now who may say, hey, I'm interested in being an Irving police officer?
So right now you need to be 21 years of age. You need to have 60 hours of college. If you don't have any prior military service or you haven't worked in our jail, there's some reductions in college depending on your military service or if you've been a detention officer for us in the past. You need to be a person of good character, high integrity, be able to pass the background check, have not been arrested. You know, the things that you would think of for a police officer. All that can be found on our website. Would encourage people who are interested in policing to go to that. We offer very competitive salary. Starting off police officers making close to $65,000 a year. They're topping out in 5.5 years in just base salary of almost $90,000. So it's a great way to earn a really good living and give back to your community.
Speaking of giving back to the community, not only do you have the seriousness of your nature of your career, but then also y'all give back to the community in so many different ways, things like Special Olympics. And can you tell us about some of the things you do each and every day people may not be aware of?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up Special Olympics because it's that time of year. We do a number of events to fund the Special Olympics Summer Games. Traditionally, they've been here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area over at Arlington at Maverick Stadium. This year they're moving to San Antonio.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's something they wanted to move them around the state and give more people opportunities to attend than just here in the North Texas region. But we raise money. All the money that we raise goes to help these Special Olympians with their travel expenses, their expenses related to competing in the games. So we do a couple of sonic tip-a-cops where our police officers act as car hops and deliver people food. And
on roller skates?
No, we have some. Some of our employees can do the roller skates. You don't want to see me on a pair of roller skates, I promise you that. Your food would never get to your car. But all of the money that we raise through that event goes to the Special Olympics. And then our big event is the Penny Drive. It's a partnership that we have with the Irving Independent School District. We partner with all of the elementary schools in Irving. We really encourage those elementary school kids to get involved and bring their loose change from home. We make it a competition because with police everything needs to be a competition. We're a very competitive lot, and so each school competes against each other on which school can raise the most money. last year we raised close to $40,000 in our
goodness.
penny drive alone.
That's great.
And that's really due to the commitment of those schools, those principals, the school board, the staff at the Irving Independent School District that oversee and allow us that opportunity. Townley Elementary is an undefeated champion ever since we've been doing this. They've won the event. As the winners, they always get a free ice cream party where the police officers come down and serve them ice cream.
I love it. You're very involved in the community. How would you say your community outreach actually helps you with your mission?
So in order for us to be successful as a police department, we have to have the trust and respect of our community. The only way that you develop trust is to develop a relationship. And by having these events, whether it's the penny drive, whether it's the coffee with a cop, whether it's the PAL program, you develop trust by getting to know one another. And so it puts us out in the community, not in an enforcement standpoint. We're not out there to take a report because you've been victimized by something. We're out there showing the other side of the badge, which is the human side. And so we're able to develop that relationship, build that trust, which gives us legitimacy so that when you're the victim of a crime or a witness to a crime, you're more willing to talk to us about what you experienced or what you saw than if you didn't trust us. And so that really builds upon itself and helps us keep crime as low as it's been.
I'm glad you mentioned the word talk and talk with y'all, because tell us about Shop Talk.
Shop Talk is one of our outreach programs where we have developed a relationship with a number of African American barbershops and beauty salons here in town. We have officers who go into these shops, who talk with the barbers, talk with the customers. It's a really relaxed atmosphere where people's guards aren't up. People feel more at ease to share stories, to ask questions, and again, just to get to know one another. That contact theory where we're breaking down barriers and we see each other as human beings and not as police officers and community members.
And so what would you say y'all have learned so far from some of these conversations in Shop Talk?
That there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of people get their perspective from the news media, and the news media doesn't always tell the entire story.
I don't believe that. I'm just kidding. I'm just
they
teasing.
take little bits and pieces, sound bites, and if you don't know the entire story, if you don't follow it all the way through,
Right.
then you don't understand what led up to the event and then what happened after the event. And so we're able to answer those questions and provide a different perspective.
I was all ready to say, I object, but I had to agree. You're correct completely. Okay, so let's talk about something else you mentioned, and it's Coffee with a Cop. Can you give us more information about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Coffee with a Cop is just what it is, or how it sounds. It is an opportunity for you to come in as a resident or a community member to sit down and have a cup of coffee with a police officer. We host these a couple of times a quarter, different areas around the city. And it's just an opportunity to share a cup of coffee and conversation.
Wonderful. And another time when you guys get to conversate with people in the community is during National Night Out. And it's just like what it says, like you did Coffee and a Cop. It's the same thing, National Night Out. And they do it nationwide. But Irving seems to really get involved in like participating in that.
We do. We have a great neighborhood association program. And our neighborhoods really take it upon themselves to set up parties for neighbors to get to know neighbors. And it's really meant for that. It's not meant for the police to come out and give advice or give direction, although we'll come out and speak at any of the neighborhood parties. National Night Out is meant for neighbors to come outside their houses, out into the street, and get to know who their neighbors are. That's the best crime prevention there is when you recognize and know who your neighbors are, know who's supposed to be home and when they're supposed to be home, know what cars belong in the driveway, know when lights are supposed to be on. It sounds kind of like a nosy neighbor, but that's truly when a neighborhood's working together, is when you're taking care of each other.
Yeah, that's so true. I remember when I was younger, I used to always be like, oh, we have the nosiest neighbor. Diane would tell us who was at the door before the doorbell rang.
Right.
But now in hindsight, and now that I'm a mom, I'm like, she was the best. You start to appreciate it a bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, so something that young people and, adults, people of all ages use now these days is social media. And the department really has a great social media department that uses it to connect with the community. How has that grown over the past year?
So, wow. 2 years ago when I took over as chief, one of my main goals was to truly start a social media team, a media affairs team that really drove that message. Holding community events, going out into the community, you lose a number of residents because people don't have time, people don't have the interest to coming to a senior citizen or a community center to hear from the police. They want their message in 280 characters, or they want to be able to scroll through their feed on Facebook to get their information. And so we hired a couple of what I consider social media geniuses to really run our program and to push our message. And they're very creative in how they reach that generation. It's a generation that's not me. I'm the 50-plus-year-old generation.
So that's not you on Snapchat,
It's not on Snapchat now. I have a pretty mean Twitter game, so if you're looking for a good follow there, then I may be a little biased for myself, but they keep me in line anyway.
Good.
But they do a great job of delivering that message to that younger audience and really promoting the Irving Police Department and the programs that we have.
Wow, in addition to social media, technology plays a big role now in policing, and I understand last year you started really bringing in the body cameras. How has that helped, do you believe?
So the body cameras have provided an extra layer of perspective. And so when we have a police officer responding to a call that needs to document a crime scene, instead of relying on their memory, they have their body camera to rely on. Which really documents that scene. More than anything else, everyone now anticipates that we're having that body camera, so it tends to de-escalate a situation, because when you know you're on camera, both parties behave differently. And many times they behave better because they don't.
I was like,
no,
wait,
you're good. I don't
smiling.
I don't wear one. But all of our police officers in the field, they all have body cameras on. There's very strict guidelines in when they activate those, and they've been very helpful for us many times. And I say that to say the vast majority of time, the camera really clears the officer of any complaints or wrongdoing that they're accused of, because it's all documented right there.
There you go. And speaking of technology, something else that you've implemented is using the unmanned aircraft, which people just call drones.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the short term, and we want to stay away from that drone terminology because it has this evil sounding intent, and everybody thinks of the eye in the sky that's flying around and
so
weaponized, but it's not what it is at all.
How do you use them?
We use them for search and rescue. When we have lost children, when we're looking for suspects who have run away from us into a field or hiding in a business area, we can put an eye in the sky, a camera that's both what you think of as a camera and then a nighttime camera that has some heat sensing capabilities on it. It helps us find suspects who are hiding from us. It helps us document crime scenes from a different perspective, so we're not just getting video and pictures from the ground, we're getting it from above, and it provides just that different perspective to help really tie things together when we're investigating crime scenes.
Wonderful. And everything new is not high tech per se, so you also have a medication or a medical disposal box?
We did, and it's new to us. They're not new to the area. Twice a year we would partner with the Drug Enforcement Administration and do a take-back day where our residents could come to the police station here on O'Connor and on Riverside and drop off their prescription medications as a way to dispose of it. We don't want them flushing their drugs down the toilet. That gets into our water supply and it's not environmentally friendly at all. So we put a drug take-back box in our police station, and so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, our residents have the ability to come drop off their unused prescription medication, and we dispose of it in an environmentally friendly way.
Another thing that you guys do that's an environmentally friendly way, I would say, if I was trying to sell something or use something, is the exchange zone. Times have really changed. What is the exchange zone for those who don't know?
So the exchange zone is an area in front of the police department where people who do the online purchases through eBay or 5 Mile or whatever the app is that they use to buy and sell or trade products on, they can come to the police station where you have a level of security and safety. It's a well-lit area. It's an area that we have a camera trained on just to provide a little additional security and conduct those business transactions. So many of our robberies occur because people make poor choices on when they're going to meet. Not everybody on these apps, not everyone selling or buying something is legitimate, and a lot of times they use that as a ruse to lure a victim to an area where they'll either steal what they're going to buy, or they'll steal the money that the person showed up with to buy the item.
I'm so glad you have that safe place for them. And we're just about out of time, but is there anything else you would like to share with the community before we close?
Just, so many times on a day-to-day basis, our police officers are out there, our emergency 911 dispatchers are there, our detention staff, our police support staff are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week providing services. And our community is so good about stopping to say thank you. And just, a reminder, that means a whole lot to our employees. When you take the time just to say thank you for your service, it seems a little cliche, but it's truly meaningful and impactful for our employees. And so I would encourage our residents to continue that.
Well, let me say it now. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being here. And thank you for watching. I'm Starlene Stringer, and I want to tell you to be sure to join us next time to meet the candidates in this year's council race. That's very important. That's on our next edition of Open Line, which is Thursday, April 4th at 1:30 p.m. We'll see you then.